Hello, everybody. Welcome back into the LFC Transfer Room. I am Jack. Delighted to be here alongside Kev, Jay, and Dan. My first time streaming with Dan. Going to be a great one today. We're looking at unpopular opinions. We asked for your opinions on Twitter. That's a dangerous idea because people have bad opinions. A lot of us do, even amongst us here on the panel. So we'll be delving through those here today. If you want to get involved, live comments, or if you're watching it retroactively, drop them in the comments. Your thoughts on these opinions, our takes, and the such. Kev, my friend, how are you doing today?
All good, mate. All good. How are you?
Doing great. Doing great. Jay, yourself?
Yeah, me very well. Very well.
Dan, you're a late addition. Our friend Charlie, he's got some things to take care of. We would love to have him with you, but we're equally excited to have you here.
I appreciate it. Yeah, I've streamed with Kev a few times and always love being on with him. He's the best shirt gang I've ever seen.
Cheers, man.
In the comments, make sure to get involved. If you have unpopular opinions, or if you think they're useful opinions, put them in the comments if you'd like to. And again, as that comment says, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel if you're not already. But it very much helps us when you like the videos. Without further ado, I think we should just dive right into them. We've got this lovely slide deck that will carry us through our opinions here today. So we asked yesterday for your unpopular opinions. We got some pretty interesting ones. We'll kick it off with our good man, Jay. He had the opinion letting Naby Keita leave this summer is the biggest mistake the club has ever made. Jay, this is kind of a
This is AI, lads.
This is interesting from you, Jay, because you typically don't have high praise for Keita, but you've changed your mind clearly.
This is scandalous. This lad, this is dangerous.
I will go to the actual tweet. This was Jay's actual tweet that he had from yesterday. That is in the thumbnail. That is going to be the first one for us to discuss today. Nunez won't ever be good enough. Kind of threw you off there a bit, Jay, by making you defend Keita a bit. I'll let you kick this one off because you're going to be the only one who's got the unpopular opinion in this slide deck. Walk us through why you feel like Nunez won't ever be good enough.
It's got nothing to do with his finishing ability or the chances he missed last season. It's his ability with the ball at his feet. I just don't think he's got it. I just don't think he's got any ability with the ball at his feet. His touch isn't great. He loves to occupy the left-hand side and cut in, but he's not skillful enough to do that. You've got to have skill to be able to cut inside from the left-hand side. I know he's done it for Benfica, but he's not playing against like Aruca and teams like that now. Do you know what I mean? He's in the Premier League. It's a different ball game. I know he's done it in the Champions League as well that season, but he just doesn't look like a Liverpool player to me. And when you look at the end of last season, we started winning games. It was Gakpo that was playing. And when we were great, it was when Firmino was dropping in that false nine, which Gakpo's been doing. So in our starting 11, for me, there's no way Nunez gets in it over Gakpo. And I think the system changes when you play Nunez instead of Gakpo, because he likes to occupy the left-hand side, but I don't think he's got the feet for it. So yeah, that's me thinking. It's not that I don't want him to do well, I just don't see it.
It's an unpopular opinion. Maybe not unpopular, but definitely, we invite takes that might be a bit more out there. In the comments, make sure you get your thoughts in and try to be specific. Don't just say, you're dumb, that opinion is trash. Say, that opinion is trash because you think Nunez is bad. Just a little bit of context will help. Kev, for you, on Nunez, I'm interested where you fall. You said that you've talked with Jay about this before. Where do you kind of fall in the pro? I don't even want to say pro or anti Nunez because I think we're all pro Liverpool players, but where do you expect his Liverpool career to take him?
I get where Jay's coming from. Going to match every week and fortunate enough to be a season ticket holder, and you see him up close. I can get where Jay's coming from, but I'm never one to rule someone out just after one season. He's come into a team which was not our best 11. We had loads of injuries as well. I'm not trying to make excuses for him, but to score 15 goals in your first season when a team that was struggling to get in top four, I think is still good. I still harbour the thought that we will see the Benfica Nunez, the one who played against Liverpool at Anfield, because he was unbelievable that night, and the goals he scored, the disallowed goal he scored, he was phenomenal that night. But I have to agree with where Jay's coming from. He does tend to go on that left-hand side, and there's times in the game where you need him in that box. He's not a normal centre, proper number 9, and he needs to learn how to adapt his game better. I think it hasn't helped with the biggest upgrade in his career ever. And that's the thing he's got. He's moving to probably one of the best clubs in the world, I would say, but one of the biggest teams in the Premier League, and it's a different league. And he has found it difficult at times. He's been caught out a few times. It's been fractured with fans, not only with our team, but also with others. And you see the tweets at the start of the season with him. I get where I do get where Jay's coming from, but for me, I think the problem is he's trying to adapt to us. We're trying to adapt to him at the same time, and he's trying too hard at times as well. And there's times where if he's given time to think, he dawdles on the ball and doesn't do anything with it. When he hasn't got time to think, he shows his actual true prowess of how clinical he can be. He needs to calm himself down. He needs to be ice cold, is what Thierry Henry said in the middle of the box. But he needs to adapt his game to us, and we need to adapt to him. And hopefully this season we'll see the best of him, because he'll have the likes of McAllister and Szoboszlai playing balls to him instead of Henderson, Fabinho, and probably anyone else who's playing in the middle of the park.
Dan, for you, I'll let you jump in as well on Nunez, see where you fall.
Well, I mean, I'm absolutely love Nunez. His stats are off the chain. His underlying stats, when you look at goals that he should have scored, he missed, I think, 18 big chances last year, which was the most in the league. As an attacking creating force, he is unreal and elite, and he's up there with all of the best players in the world right now that you want to look at, whether it's Kylian Mbappe, obviously Erling Haaland. If you want to look at Vinicius Jr. or even what Karim Benzema was doing over the past couple of years as well. I get what Kev and Jay are saying, though, when they look at Nunez and the ball seems to bounce off of him a lot. Does he really play the left wing position like we've seen in the past, like with Sadio Mane, who I think is the best example that we can compare to, because Mane could just do everything. He could defend and press. He could hold up the ball. He could spin a player. He could get in behind. He could score. He could do all these things in a relatively consistent fashion. I think we're kind of misremembering kind of how inconsistent Mane was at times, especially in like the 17-18. He was very hit and miss. Even 18-19 when we won the Champions League, that was his best season for Liverpool, even until he just left recently, where he scored the most goals, and even still he missed a bunch of good chances. I get what Jay means when he says like won't ever be good enough. I think it's a little extreme, Jay. I think you're predicting a lot of seasons there where like he doesn't improve. The thing about Nunez that what I read when I read last year about the scouting that Edwards did on him and the rest of the staff did is that he's a very perfectionist player where he hyper focuses on technique and hyper focuses on very small things at times, which I think was his biggest detriment last year. Like Kev mentioned, that he overthinks a lot in these specific roles. And honestly, the one detriment to him last year, besides his missed chances, was just his defensive work. And that's why he was not in the team going into the end of the year. It wasn't, even though he had been carrying some injuries and some discomfort, it was because he wasn't doing the pressing that Klopp wanted. That's why Gakpo was in there, because he was doing the Gerrard pressing. He was doing the ball recoveries. And he was doing everything that Klopp wanted, and that was what Klopp said. He said the way you get into this team is through the pressing. And as long as Nunez improves on that, I think he'll be in this team much more than we're probably expecting with the forward options we have this year.
For sure. Some great stuff there. I'm going to bring in a fifth member. Charlie, my friend, I'm glad that you're able to get on. I know you were debating, do you come on, do you not? Do you want to throw off the vibe? It's never thrown off when you're here, Charlie.
Oh, thank you.
How are you doing, my friend?
Sorry, yeah, I'm really good. Sorry I'm late.
No worries.
Cheers, Charlie. Cheers.
No worries, man. I'm glad you're here.
You were allowed to be late, Charlie. No one else here can be late. You were allowed to be late.
I have a valid reason.
You're good. You're good. I'll throw you right in the fire, though. I'll let you jump in on this take on Nunez.
Okay.
Going forward, we may not, just because we have a lot of takes we wanted to get through, may not have everybody chime in on every single one. But for you, Charlie, it's an interesting discussion with Nunez. How do you kind of fall on the spectrum of belief in his ability long term?
Yeah, so apologize if any of the guys are kind of repeating what I'm going to be saying. I think what I've seen of the training sessions the last couple of days, he's kind of front and center in terms of the photos, the language, that little quip that he had against the guys for the lactate test, which is really, really cool, really, really fun. He shows that he's got something about him. Yeah, it's an interesting one, Jay, because calling this one out, and I know it's like fun, but there are, you may have some kind of seriousness behind it. Would he actually be able to kind of fulfill the promise? It is an interesting one. It's going to take a lot to kind of convince Klopp that he will be the de facto number 9, considering what Dan said, because of course the last bit of it, Gakpo is more the Klopp Firmino type player than what Nunez will ever be. I don't think he'll be able to have that kind of transitional play. He's very much a off the shoulder, type striker. It's just a case of what could he bring? Can he actually develop his game enough to be able to warrant that number, that false 9 kind of scenario? So that'll be interesting.
Definitely will be. I feel like there's been too much money invested in him for Liverpool not to make it work out. There is definitely a player in there. I think, in my take on it, is that before Liverpool let him not be good enough, they will make the team worse off to cater for him, if that makes sense. So they'll abandon the false 9, stick him in the middle at a worst case, just to make him work if it's really not functional. I do think, though, he's speaking English. Like, people act like this is going to be the magic Band-Aid that solves every issue. I love some Darwin Nunez KS ball, but we'll see if it actually ends up panning out. It's confusing. Go ahead, Charlie.
Can I just ask one really quick question, Jay? Have you been giving Hendo some tips in the gym, mate? Because your little avatar there, just showing off the 6-pack, the arms, the guns, mate. I think Hendo's taking a little bit of a hint from you.
With the baby's heavy, lad. That's all that is.
It's the boxing. Yeah, and I mean, I just want to throw it in because I don't know. I think we're gonna move on here shortly, but I just wanted to get this in. I think that what our expectation of Nunez is really comes down to who we think he's replacing. I think he's replacing Salah going forward, because Liverpool are the only team right now in the Premier League that our top scorer is our right winger. No one really has that anymore. I think the last club that successfully had a goal scorer be their winger was Messi at Barcelona for the most part. So I think that, when we talk about what we want Nunez to be, I don't think he's ever going to be the Bobby, you play him off and you essentially hold up play, bring him on the play, and then move up the pitch that way. I don't think no one's ever going to expect him to do that role as like his full-time job. I think what they are coaching him and morphing him to be is some combination between what Mane and Salah used to bring, which was that pressing from the front, that harrying, but then with this chaos Nunez ball where he is just a goal chance creation machine that you can build off of.
Indeed. Rigo, we mentioned maybe would have been interesting to bring him on. He's a very passionate defender of Darwin Nunez.
Agreed.
Gary believes he's going to score 40 next season. We'll see. 40 is a lot of goals. It's a lot of goals.
If he can be composed, it's that composure thing. If he's composed in front of a goal, he's going to bang him in.
Indeed. He is going to be a fascinating discussion next year. I think if he kicks on, could be a special year. But if he continues to kind of have a middling or struggling performances, I mean, it's not a massive, like, this guy's got a massive brain. Players play poorly. Team is a little worse off. But that's probably going to be the case if he doesn't play to his fullest. Let's jump into the next one. A pair of slides on Henderson. We could this is something that we could do an entire stream on. Jordan Henderson is a more successful captain than Steven Gerrard. I want to get everyone's take on it, but I want to give you guys a small time limit on it. Don't go into some massive, back when I watched Gerrard in 1999 playing for the first team. Kev, for you, I'll let you jump in first. Yes, no. I'll push you because you're a guy who loves to sit on the fence. I'm a push you.
Cheers, Jack.
I know, yeah.
Hi, Jack. Bloody hell. No.
You gave me the easy one,
Last week
Kev.
for the Independence Day. Congratulations on me giving me the hardest question of the night. Do you know what I mean? So, you know,
Indeed.
what's going on here? Right. My answer would be no.
Okay. Any quick rationale there? Is it
Yeah.
talent?
Yeah, because you can put Steven Gerrard. Steven Gerrard's our best player, one of the best players, and in the top 3 in forever for Liverpool, because he's the only one who can go in generationally and play in the same position, and you still get the best. During his time at Liverpool, he was dragging the team to finals and getting them to win over the line. If he had the team that he had, that Henderson had, he would have won a lot more, and he would have won the Premiership a lot more.
Anybody disagree with Kev? Because I definitely fall under, you can't just put what the team did around him as the reason for more successful. Does anybody want to make?
I'll play
the
devil's
argument?
advocate. I'll
Go,
do
Charlie.
it. Okay, yes, he is. If we're talking about that line, successful captain,
Sure.
just those 2 words. Hendo's won Champions League, Premier League. He's won the World Club Championship. He's won everything, and that's more than what Gerrard has done for Liverpool. That's the possibly the rationale against it. As a player, 100%, Gerrard's a better player. As a captain, with the titles under his belt, Henderson.
Interesting. It's a fascinating one. Dan, go ahead.
I was gonna say I'm kind of in line with Charlie. Now I'm a massive Henderson. I love Henderson. I've watched Henderson ever since. I've pretty much been watching Liverpool for the most part over here in the States as well. I'm not like so biased against Henderson. I can't see his faults. And like Charlie said, technically yes, if we consider captaincy as trophies, then Henderson obviously is more successful than Gerrard. If we think of a captain as an on-the-pitch leader in a very vocal sense, the one thing everyone kind of knocks against Henderson is he just shouts at everyone, which I think is the ultimate damning with faint praise. Obviously he does more than shout at people, but last year he didn't play well. A lot of people didn't play well, so it's an very easy stick to beat him with. I think Henderson is a better captain in kind of that on-the-pitch leader sense, but in very much a vocal, telling people what to do sense. That was never really Gerrard's thing. If you watch when he played, he was very much a leader in through his play. His play is the one that did the leadership. I'm the best player. Mm-hmm. Let me take us forward as well. And this has always been the debate with what your captain should be. Should your captain be your best player, or should your captain be someone on the pitch that's going to lead by example, do the instructions, be the general on the pitch, the manager on the pitch to some extent. And I would say that Gerrard was never really great at that, but that's because Gerrard's probably one of the best players of all time, and he's not. That's never really been his personality. That was what Carragher was for years. Even when it wasn't Jamie Carragher, it was Sami Hyypiä, or even in the 2013-14 title race, Gerrard was the main captain, but Henderson was as much a leader in that team with Gerrard, both physically doing all the running, but also emotionally as well.
Definitely. You make a great point in terms of best leader, in terms of capacity to motivate a group of men versus most talented. When players watch Messi go out on the field, his leading by example, but I mean, he's one of the quietest players ever, even though he's probably the greatest of all time. It's a really big nomenclature debate, successful. They won up more titles, technically. It's an interesting debate. I think we'll jump into a different Henderson discussion, much more relevant to this season. This is from Twitter user Liam O'Connor saying he will have a good season next season. Being able to be rotated in and out will allow him to give 100% every time he plays. Where do we stand on Henderson next season? I can kick it off. I think he should play 30 minutes every other game is hopefully what he's playing. And in that capacity, it's kind of hard to be bad. Kev, I'll throw you. Actually, Kev, I'll let you have a break. Jay, I'll throw you under the bus first. Jay, for you on Henderson, are you expecting a good season? Are you expecting an average season? What are you expecting from Henderson?
I think as long as he's not starting every game, he can have a good season. He's not. He hasn't got the legs for that no more, and he hasn't really got the ability, to be honest, for that anymore. The big difference this season as well is with Szoboszlai likely to play in his role. It's a completely different player in terms of creativity-wise. So I think Enzo will have a good season as long as he's not called upon too often. He's still got a role to play, starting Europa League games and maybe lesser games at home, or when you've got to get it over the line the last 20 minutes, half an hour, that burst of energy. So he can definitely have a good season in that capacity, but if he's starting every week, then no, I don't think he will have a good season because he'll run himself into the ground and then everyone will jump on his back again.
It definitely is an interesting one. Dan, you've mentioned that you're a big Henderson protector, advocate. How much do you hope he plays next year, and how good a season do you expect from him, considering how his role may change with the new arrivals?
Well, I wouldn't say protector. I don't think he needs protecting from me. And, sometimes on Liverpool Twitter, I feel like me advocating for players sometimes gets skewed as like defenders, like that I'm going to come to Henderson's defense like every time he does something wrong, Henderson played a bad ball. Oh, it was Allison's fault. He let the goal in. So some nonsense like that. Honestly, if Henderson plays 30 games next year, all comps, I think that's a good metric. It's as much as you have to pick and choose. If they can pick and choose his games, then it'll be great. Like Jay said, I think he's absolutely spot on. If he's having to play, 60 games next year, I think that's just demanding way, way too much. On top of the fact that you have players like Bajcetic, you have Szoboszlai, you have Elliott, you even have potentially another midfielder coming in that's going to have to need time with him as well, Alavia, Thuram, or somebody else. And even the possibility of Trent playing midfield minutes as well will come in, and that's not even getting to like formation changes with like a Gakpo or somebody else just being thrown into that midfield spot as well. If Henderson is allowed to pick his games, or Klopp has his big whiteboard, he says, I'm going to pick these games and I'm going to need my captain on the field, then I think he will be, I think we'll see peak Jordan, which is not, I think we get confused about what Jordan Henderson is as a midfielder. He's not a tough tackling midfielder like a Milner, where he's going to come in, put a tackle on you, and let you know you're in a game. He is very much a shadowing presser. He does interceptions. He marks space. It's very Genie Wijnaldum-esque at times. And his on-the-ball ability is not terrible. It's actually much better than what Sandro Tonali is going to bring to Newcastle. And I know he was a player that most people really, really wanted to see a couple of years ago. I think if we can pick and choose his games, he will. I think we can do another quad. Hopefully, if we don't lose any other players, I think we'll be able to win another quad. Well, not win another quad, but get into that position to win one.
That would be a lovely situation. Kev, Charlie, any quick remarks on Henderson that haven't been said or things you want to reiterate, Kev?
We play 29 games between now and the end of December, so he has a chance and opportunity to play every other game. I agree totally with what Jake said. He should be a Milner kind of player. He should come on when we need him to. Last 20 minutes of games, and he should be starting the Europa Leagues, because let's be honest, it's not a competition, or the EFL competition. They're not competitions in the early doors that we want to play in. So get him to do the Milner role, get him with the youngsters, get him to contribute in that way. There's 29 games in just going up to the end of December. We need everyone to be rotating. I'd be predominantly having our main 11. I'd have him on the bench for every Premier League game, but I wouldn't be starting.
Indeed. Charlie, anything that you want to add before we jump to the next topic?
Really quickly, I wouldn't be surprised that he starts the game against Chelsea, but I think he's probably our fifth choice midfielder.
It is. You make a good point there, Charlie. If he's your fifth choice midfielder, what is a good season? And I don't think you need him to move worlds. You just need him to do a job. And that would be a good season. I think that's very reasonable to expect. So maybe Liam's opinion is too reasonable for our unpopular opinions. Lindstrom here talking about FSG. We'll keep the discussion short because this could, again, be an entire week's worth of streams discussion on FSG. Says FSG are decent owners, and I'd rather stay with them than being owned by the likes of Saudi, Qatar, Abu Dhabi, etc. We got 5 of us here. Let's do a mini poll on this one. You've got there's a lot of things that can be brought up when you've got a big takeover, like what's happening potentially at United, Manchester United, or at Newcastle, what they've had. If you're offered the choice, what are you taking? Are you taking any player you basically want in world football to sign for you, or FSG? Kev, you got off easy last time. I'm throwing you under the bus this time. Which side of the fence you picking?
It's very difficult, this one, because the flip side of the Saudi, Qatar, and Abu Dhabi one will be what's happened with Man City and what they've generated outside. I would see from that aspect that I can see Liverpool actually growing, and we'll probably get more funding around the city of Liverpool than what our government would. So from that side of things, from that flip side, you'd be eager to do that. For me, no, it's not. All I want is I won't be able to have the opportunity to go in. I want someone who's willing to invest, but also having the ability to go in and fork out. Now, it may mean that we have to get a state own it, but for me, no. I'd rather have the capability of being able to do that with a strong billionaire, but there's also sports mindset. I think there's a chairman of the Lakers or someone like that who's billionaire. Who's probably the nearest you probably get. That's who I'd want. I want someone like that. I don't want all this.
The Microsoft guy.
Yeah,
I think it's the Microsoft guy, wasn't he?
Yeah. That's what I would like. I like someone who is sports minded. I think we alluded to it when we were talking about this last year when the investment came around. That who would be like, and to be honest, it's a hard one. It's a tricky one. I can see why people would want the state side, but for me, no. I just want the ability to be able to go in the market and spend as much as we can and not be forced to go through what we have done the last 4 or 5 years. For me,
it is an interesting one. Jay, for you, where you fall?
It's hard to disagree with anything Kev said, to be honest, lad. I can see why some fans have the lure of wanting Saudi and Qatar, because I mean, you can talk about City doing it. When Mourinho came to Chelsea, that was the first time we'd ever really seen spending like that, where they just sign whoever they wanted, whenever they wanted. And it's appealing to some fans being able to sign whoever you want, whenever you want. Now, for me, I don't want mad windows like City. I just want to be in the discussion for players. I'm sick of seeing in the press, Liverpool can't afford this player, or it's too much for Liverpool to go for that one. I'm not saying I want like Haaland and Mbappe and all that in a season. But if players like that are leaving, we should be in the discussion, and seriously in the discussion, and we never are. This window's been good getting Szoboszlai and McAllister, but we're out for Caicedo, we're out for Rice, we're out for, I'm not going to say Mbappe because that's stupid, but we shouldn't be out for anyone with Liverpool. So I'm with Kev, I just want an owner like who's happy to put some money in, nothing mad, just back the team when it needs backing.
It's a weird one because in this dichotomy I'm presenting, there is no middle ground. It's either, lots of cash, but you're wondering where did this cash come from, or FSG, where it's just an empty briefcase, and they're like, you should be happy you have a briefcase that you didn't have. Go ahead, Charlie.
But Jack, there is a middle ground if you look at Kroenke at Arsenal.
For sure.
Even
right?
Villa.
So, yeah.
Villa spend, you know what I mean? Villa spend like a lot of money.
Yeah, but I think Villa have got an Egyptian owner, haven't they?
Mm-hmm.
It's a Yankee, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh,
it's an Egyptian owner. I can't remember his name now.
Yeah, but so I mean, just looking at Arsenal, if we use that as a kind of single case, they've got an American owner, not state owned. The owner's been really quiet for years, and then all of a sudden he's like, right, I need to get value from this product that I've got, so I'm going to spend money. And all of a sudden they're been out of the Champions League for 10 years, and now suddenly just dropping 100 million on Rice, like that. There is that middle ground. It requires a little bit of brave. It's someone to be brave in terms of who owns Liverpool. Yeah, it's mad. I wouldn't want the issues behind a state-owned, country owning Liverpool because of what's happening with Man City and all the rest. But I do think there must be someone out there that would be interested in buying FSG. Now it's a case of FSG not willing to part ways. That's what it comes down to these days.
Charlie, I understand what you mean there. I think the Kroenke example is, I think there's a lot that gets forgotten about Arsenal and Kroenke, and the thing that is mostly forgotten is that Arsenal for years had no budget because of the Emirates Stadium, and they just recently got done paying that off. And part of this the spending that they did before they got in the Champions League, buying like Nicola Pepe, Fabio Vieira last year, which everyone was making a big deal about. Even going back to oh God, who else? Tierney, Ben White, all these players, is that they hadn't spent for years and years, like through Wenger, and Wenger just left, I think, in 2017. So you're talking, it's very recently that they've started spending more money, but that came back because of the fact that they had paid off their stadium finally, and now they had all this extra money floating around that they could reinvest. And also Kroenke had became majority shareholder at the time in Arsenal around, I think it was 2019, 2020. So it's been like a slow revamping of spending. And yeah, they just recently dropped 100 million on Rice. The first time in the Champions League. But if I'm being quite honest, 100 million on Rice does not make Arsenal like 30% better than they were last year. He's a better version of Xhaka. Now, they bought Rice and Caicedo, I'd be worried. But rather, they just bought Rice. And if they're going to play a midfield of Rice, Odegaard, and Havertz, I mean, I'll play that every week. I don't care. I'd put Szoboszlai, Mac, and Fabinho on there and say, like, all right, guys, go have fun. Go run at them. They're not going to track you.
It's definitely a very interesting debate that will always exist. We'll jump on to the next one because it's in a similar vein. From Craig Guyver, Klopp should be held more accountable for what's happening than FSG. This is an interesting one. It's an opinion, that's for sure. I would definitely say it's unpopular. Held more accountable is very tough verbiage. I'm interested if anybody has any major reactions to Craig's beliefs. I don't want to throw anybody under the bus unless they have some major beliefs. Kev? Your mic, my friend. Kev, your mic.
Yeah. I do think Craig has a point to a degree, but not to a certain degree. I think if you look at the end of Mike Edwards' tenure and Julian Ward coming in, I don't think Julian Ward's been strong enough. I think also Klopp has been allowed to allow probably Pep Linders have more of a say and go down that route. He hasn't gambled enough. He's mentioned a few failings that he wish he would have done. At the same time, you blame the man, you blame the board. At some degree, over the last 2 years or so, you'd have to put something on Klopp for the stubbornness, for not going out and buying any midfielders last season, thinking we had enough. And then with the week leading up, we lose 3-4 people and still didn't bring anyone in. We didn't bring a midfielder in the January window. We get Gakpo, and then we still struggle in midfield. Although it is one of them. I don't full-heartedly agree with it, but I do think Klopp's stubbornness has to be looked at. Just because I mentioned Klopp as being stubborn and having a go and being criticising him, doesn't mean I'm against Klopp. I just think that, at some point you do have to have a bit of criticism. You have to own of what's happened. And that lies with the manager. If the manager's not happy with certain things, then that's fine. But to say that you were happy with the midfield that you knew was getting old and couldn't play the formation, and then was stubborn enough to continue with that formation and not change it until January, shows to a degree that there is a bit of criticism that needs to be laid at Klopp's door for me.
Indeed. Great points by Kev. I think, accountability should be on Klopp. We shouldn't, paint 2 of the last 3 seasons that have had massive struggles. We left ourselves short. Was that a Klopp choice? Was that an FSG choice? It depends, honestly, on a lot of your preconceived notions. I want to see if anybody believes the more accountable aspect of it. Does anybody agree with Craig, or are we in disagreement that, yes, accountability to Klopp, but if you're given a sliding share of blame, who has more on Klopp, if anybody? Charlie, you said no. Dan?
It's difficult because I think we from the outside looking in, I mean, more accountable. I don't know how much Craig is giving accountability to Klopp, if he's going from 20% to 50%. Mm-hmm. I think Klopp himself would say that he is responsible for most of what goes on at Liverpool, in the sense that, like, pretty much every decision they make, he has a say in. This is not a situation where, Tom Warner and Billy Hogan are just making financial decisions and Klopp is outside, like running laps with the boys. I think that the problems that Klopp has are part of what makes him so good. Like, you don't get the quadruple last year, Chase, if he doesn't build that squad that everyone buys into, if you disrupt squad harmony, which at times I think people like really undervalue, or they say with like an eye roll, like, oh yeah, squad harmony, like, we just got to keep all the boys in, like new signings. But that is a real thing that you have to build as a manager and a coach, where you have to manage, 23, 24, 25 personalities. These are professionals with like highly paid contracts that want to play football, that want to play for the national teams, and you have to manage egos. And he has a really set way on how you do that. And I think what Kev said is absolutely right. His stubbornness it can be his benefit in the sense that it helps build that culture, but it's also his detriment when things go wrong and he doesn't adjust. If there's one thing that separates Klopp and his essential rival right now, Pep Guardiola, is that even though they are very, very similar in many ways, Pep is very much willing to throw things out and just start from scratch much faster than Klopp is. Now, whether or not it's a byproduct of Pep being in City, where he can essentially spend 300 million on left backs and play Fabian Delph there and Zinchenko and just like and then Nathan Ake and then John Stones in the midfield, is a whole nother debate. If Klopp had more investment or had owners like a Todd Bowley or even a Stan Kroenke that are willing to, like, hey, Jurgen, here's 500 million, do what you want with it, I think we would maybe see a different Klopp, but I think we would still have the same issues. And I think Klopp will always be accountable for both good and the bad, come what may.
Indeed. We'll bring up some comments here, get some thoughts from the comments. Rigo saying, paper's over a lot for us. He's been hamstrung by minimum investment. And some other comments. Rigo is saying, slow switch in formation cost us. El Hero is saying the same thing. Cost us top 4 change formation way too late. But again, Rigo saying bigger share of the blame in terms of that sense. And then we got Mahai saying subtle hints about the lack of investing and the frustration from Klopp in there. And so I think the general consensus is more on FSG than Klopp, but I think it's swaying a little bit. There's a more criticism of Klopp, but the follow-up to that is just, it is what it is. He's a brilliant manager, and I don't think we switch anything anytime soon. We've got a little bit of a time constraint, so I want to dig into 2 more topics before we get out of here. They're both interesting ones. Nishant saying this is the right time to sell Van Dijk. I'm going to be devil's advocate on this one. And I'll let somebody critique against me. He just turned 32 3 days ago. Virgil van Dijk did. His value, if you look at a chart, if we're going to sell him, it's not going up. When he's 33, when he's 32 and a half, if we sell him in January, which would be a very weird scenario, it's never going to be higher than this. If we could sell him and bring in Levi Colwill, you go a decade younger, maybe a little worse next year, but over the next decade, you're good. Who's disagreeing with me on that? Dan, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean, you can't replace Virgil. Like, even you mentioned Colwill.
I just did. I just replaced him with Colwill.
I know you mentioned Colwill, but Colwell's only played like 30 games and he hasn't gotten injured yet. So there's still a thing where Colwill could still definitely get injured, and Colwill hasn't played in the system the way Van Dijk has. There's not really that many great center backs out there. We think there are so many great center backs because we see all of Liverpool's all the time. But if you say that if Van Dijk is our number 1 center back and Konate second, Konate is better than a lot of the French center backs, a lot of the European center backs that are playing right now. And the closest ones that are coming up to him are the ones in like the U21s, and even still, they haven't proved themselves at a top club yet. Like, if you sell Van Dijk for Colwill, you are getting younger, but you're also severely lowering the floor of the Liverpool team, where like a defense that struggled last year, which struggled in confidence, struggled in form, struggled in a bunch of different scenarios, especially with our pressing and everything else and personality. If you're selling Van Dijk for Colwill, I love Levi Colwill. I would sell my kidneys if we could get Levi Colwill, and I would use my last moments waiting for that announcement, for that here we go from Fabrizio Romano. But you're essentially cutting out a lot of the soul and the personality of this team for essentially still an unproven player. And it's the same thing with the center back at Leipzig. Veridal. I don't know how to say his name. I keep forgetting.
Gavardio, I think is how it is.
Gavardio. Because even so, I think Gavardio is a great player. I mean, listen, I agree. I think he's a great player. I don't think he's worth 115 million pounds though, or euros.
Yeah, no, I don't want to throw you off, Dan, by bringing up these comments. Just want to bring up some other perspectives. It is, it would kill the now. Honestly, selling Van Dijk would kill this current team and its ability to compete. Just because you're getting rid of, is he a vice captain now? He's a leader, regardless of what he is. Can anybody see the logic in this? I don't think we can see a world where it happens. But can anybody see logic?
I can.
Go ahead, Kev.
A world, I'll tell you what world it would be. It would be if he was playing under Bob Paisley. Bob Paisley is the template for any Liverpool manager to be. He was the most ruthless and was willing and was the most pandemic. He got rid of players who you thought were at the peak. Got rid of Keegan, brought in Dalglish. He would have got rid of Van Dijk, if not now, halfway through the season. There's no way he would last under Van Dijk now or under Paisley because of his injury and the fact that he hasn't reached that form again, and he would be. That's the only time I can see it happen. I can see the logic of it happening, but we don't do that. That would be too ruthless. That's probably be the most ruthless thing that Klopp has ever done at Liverpool, apart from getting Karius and replacing Karius with Alisson. There would have to be a replacement. Replace them with a lad who's got the potential and has played virtually about 13 and a half games is not the way forward. You need to replace a Rolls Royce with a Rolls Royce or something better like a Bugatti. That's the only way you replace the likes of a Virgil van Dijk. Who would that is? Who's that? Who can that be? Well, you got Gabriel at Leipzig, who we've talked about, but he's not worth the money that he is. But how many said at the time that Van Dijk was worth 75 million at the time? And look how beneficial it was. If you're buying that over 10 years, then it's working out investment-wise that you're investing for those 10 years as a centre-back. So it has to be of someone of that kind of calibre. And if that's the new 75 million, then that's where we need to be looking. But you can't just replace them with a potential. It has to be like for like for me.
Fergie did that. Fergie did it, didn't he? He got rid of Stam and brought in Ferdinand. I don't know if that's right, if that's the time kind of matches. But just look at that. He saw issues with Nistelrooy, got rid of him, and how good was he? You saw it from the very, very best. I think Pep's a little bit different because he's essentially just hit it lucky. He's hit it really, really lucky with what he's got. But Fergie did it really, really well. You could say Wenger did it for the early part of his managerial career at Arsenal.
It would be, Kev, you mentioned just moving Karius on, for Alisson as a harsh, and that is harsh and by Klopp, but it was justified. He just dropped a clanker in the Champions League final, so completely justified. So this would be out of left field.
But trying to find something as ruthless that Klopp has done, that's probably the most ruthless we've actually seen Klopp in this time, unless someone can mention something more. But that's what you have to do. You could mention Sakho, his treatment of Sakho, being on that pre-season tour and getting rid of him straight away. Not part of my plans. See you later. That's the ruthlessness we want to see, but we haven't seen it enough to go with what the comments of Nishant has said, because it goes totally against that. And you can't, as I say, Van Dijk, I wouldn't replace him. I think he's fine. Even now, he's still too good. But if you are going to replace him, you've got to replace him with a Bugatti. It's got to be like for like for me.
Yeah,
and that's my big thing against selling Van Dijk is that I don't know anybody right now in world football that would be as close or as good as Van Dijk, even as right now, even when he's not, Ballon d'Or challenging defender Virgil van Dijk, as well. Even Guardiola and Colwell, who again I think are fantastic players, and I again would buy Colwell. I love how Kev mentioned Paisley and Charlie mentioned Ferguson, two the best British managers of all time, and we all know that Bob Paisley is the best because what he did in 9 years is still unmatched from any manager and probably will never be matched even by Pep Guardiola. And I love Paisley. Paisley was the smartest manager because he said if you buy 3 players every year, you get 3 years down, you replace your whole team. So, I agree with what Kev said about the ruthlessness of it as well. I think if Liverpool right now can be both smart and ruthless if they just buy Colwell. Like that solves so many things. Like because it essentially tells Van Dijk, like Virgil, we're going to manage your minutes no matter what. You're not playing a Europa League game. You're going to play. You're going to play. 36 games a season until you run down your contract, and those 36 games will pick for you. Those will be Premier League games. Those will be Championship games. In many ways. And Charlie, I know you mentioned how Fergie did it to Stam when he eventually brought in Vidic and Ferdinand, but then Fergie also let Vidic and Ferdinand get way too old, and that pretty much ruined United's defense up until today, where United's best defender is a 5'11" center back that's probably going to concede like 60 goals next year.
Yep.
We will wrap the discussion on Van Dijk here. We got a few more left in us, but we'll only do one more. We'll do another video of these because there's just a lot of discussions around the club. But some of us here got some time constraints, so we'll wrap it up with this one from Twitter user Dr. Bad Scientist. We should have sold Salah last year. Now, this is an interesting one, just like on a multitude of levels. And I apologize to the world. It's only had 15 views, and I've given it a lot more, at least 5 more here. All of our eyes have seen it. A crazy one in a lot of ways. To the ruthless point, he had such a good season. This is the only opinion. It's a weird one to kind of ended on. I just don't understand it. I don't know if anybody can even make an argument for it because Salah carried us in a lot of aspects last year. And I can't see how you can – I don't even understand the retroactive part of it, the ruthlessness part of it. Does anybody have any support for our good friend, the bad scientist, Doctor? No support for him?
I'd probably say last year, probably not. This year, if Saudi money came in and they offered in 150 mil, 200 mil, some crazy money, I think we'd be daft to turn it down. I got to be honest. As good as Salah is, and as fit and healthy and, as reliable as he is and scoring goals and whatnot, getting 200 mil in for him, because I'm pretty sure that they would pay for a Arabic Muslim player, be the star, bigger than Ronaldo, bigger than Messi, if they were to ever go to that region and play football. We'd be daft if we turned it down.
That is the one argument I think you could make. But our good friend, Dr. Bad Scientist, you have the most unpopular opinion of the stream. And I think we had to get at least one out there that was truly out there. Some really good ones that I think should be discussions later on future streams. I'll show them really quick. Thiago makes us worse when he plays. Doesn't fit. He should be moved on. Joe Gomez could be the best possible right back option if we completely convert Trent. And then Elliott is as good as Curtis Jones in terms of athleticism, talent, and ceiling. So a trio of really great discussion topics that we'll have on a later stream at some point down the road. But we'll keep you teasing for that. Make sure you subscribe to the channel and you like the video. Any last thoughts from any of us before we get out of here on those? Any unpopular opinions we want to share?
Yeah, I quite like the Naby Keita one that Jay put up. I thought that was the best.
I'll bring it back up.
Charlie, yeah, I missed that.
Charlie didn't see it. I'm bringing it back. We got to run this back. All right, here we are. He said, this is a quote from our good friend JK. He tweeted this on 1:27 p.m. yesterday. Letting Naby Keita leave this summer is the biggest mistake the club has ever made. #LFC. Now, the only thing that's crazy about that, Jay, is I don't see you really as a hashtag kind of guy. Because I was kind of big surprise.
Yeah.
Everything else, though, that made complete sense.
I like it.
I've got Keita tattoos on my back.
Yeah. My unpopular opinion, or maybe unpopular opinion, is that I think that Curtis Jones will probably be the best academy player Liverpool have ever produced besides Gerrard going forward. I think he'll be the best.
I was about to go and like, what was happening?
I think he'll be the best academy player they've produced besides Steven Gerrard. Like, Steven Gerrard's obviously the best, but I think he'll be the second best by the time he ends his career. Like, better than Owen, better than Fowler, better than Trent. I think he'll be better than Trent going forward, because you have to remember, Joe. Listen, Joe's
the beginning.
Listen, he's bangers of opinions here.
Listen, he's 21. I love Trent. Trent's 24. We don't know how many years he's going to have left because he's played a lot of minutes in his young body. Curtis Jones is still 21. He's going to be in the midfield, and I think he'll be the best prospect by the time he ends his career that we've had besides Gerrard. I think he'll have a more successful career than Trent. I think he'll have a better career than Fowler did or Owen did, Carragher. I think he'll be essentially like what we wish Gerrard had, which is a really, really talented player that had a really, really good team and structure around him going forward.
You just took a blowtorch to the stream
Yeah.
before we got out of here. We're going to leave it on that. No reaction.
got
to that. The next one that Dan is on, he'll have to defend himself as we just barrage him with, but have you seen this? That'll be a good one for the future.
I love Trent. I think Trent's one of the best right back in the world. Like 90% of the time he plays. So this is not a anti-Trent stream.
Yeah. Jay had to get out of here because
he's just like,
he hated the take so much. He was like, I'm done. I'm out of here. I'm gone. That'll do it for our stream here today. It was Unpopular Opinions. Dan dropping a great one at the end. We'll certainly pick this topic up again later in the summer because there will be some unpopular opinions, I'm sure, about what happens and what should have happened, what didn't happen, and just the overall long-term stuff for Liverpool. But for Kev, for Dan, for Charlie, I've been Jack. Delighted to be here for the LC Transfer Room. We'll catch you in our next video or stream. Take care.